Okay, good morning and welcome to Iyun Benzion. Now we'll be analyzing Daf Kuf Zayin, Yevamos 117. As I said many times, even though it's not so clear from the Mishnayos, I really believe there's a difference between an aid kasher and an aid puzzle by aid isha. Even though we believe in apostle aid, right, like a woman or an eved or aid mipa, we believe all these things, but we don't really believe them. We allow her to get married. It's a koach of basin to allow her to get married. You go to basin, basically gives you a stamp of approval. And we say basically we have enough reasons to allow her to get remarried because first of all, if the guy comes back, she has a knossos. She's gonna get, she's gonna be create mamzerim for both husbands. She has to get the divorce from both husbands. She loses all her money from both husbands. So it's pretty severe if he comes back. Besides the embarrassment of being married, so to speak, committing adultery. Um, and so that's embarrassing. I'll banish her from the community. It's pretty bad. So she's going to be daiko mitzvah. Now that, according to what I explained, is not exactly it's not circumstantial evidence. It's just enough. Basin had enough reason to allow her to remarry because of iguna and daiko mitzvah and the chumras. All those three reasons combined, Basin said it's enough of a reason to allow her to remarry, but not because of proof. It doesn't provide proof. It doesn't even provide an assumption. We don't assume the husband died. It's just a koach of Basin, and therefore the Mishnah said on Daf Pei Zayin on base. If Basin gave you the stamp of approval, yes. If they didn't give you the stamp of approval, you have to bring a korban. You're responsible. What the Mishnah did not talk about over there was an aid kosher. People think it's talking the same thing, an aid kosher, but it's very clear from our Gemara over here. This Mishnah on Kufya Zayin and Beis, there's a clear difference between a kosher aid and a apostle aid when it comes to aid asish, even though we believe both of them, but for very different reasons. An aid kosher is believed because, first of all, an Eid Echad is believed in the Torah for certain things. He helps create an assumption, right? In order to be Machayis on a Shvuah, an Eid Echad is good for a Shvuah. It creates an assumption. He's not a complete proof, but because you have Milsa Davudi Gluye, because this is eventually going to be known, so therefore circumstantial evidence combined with the assumption is considered a proof enough to let her remarry, and that is better in some regards than just the Koach of Basin to let her marry based on a puzzle aid. In this paragraph, we introduce a new concept that there's a third type of nemanis when the actual wife herself goes with her husband to Medina Sayyam and then comes back. So even though she's normally a apostle aid, a wife is a apostle aid, she's a karov and she's an isha, she's apostle aid, but she does. We've seen from the Gemara is that the Gemara does consider that to be a valid edus to create an assumption or a raya, a proof that she can remarry, and therefore we said there will be no knossos if the husband does come back. There's circumstantial evidence being that she went with her husband overseas, and therefore she's daiko mitzvah below mashakra. She is first-hand knowledge of the thing. She has first-hand knowledge. So even though the testimony of the isha has no nemanis, but the circumstantial evidence is so great over here to allow us to use that as a proof. There's two different daiko mitzvah. There's a daiko mitzvah of our parak and daiko mitzvah of Daf Pei Zayin, where daiko mitzvah is just a reason for Basin to be makel over here as opposed to actual proof in our parak. Here, the Mishnah contrasts the two. We finally have a Mishnah that brings the two head on head. The Mishnah on Kufya Zayin Beis says, Eid Omer Meis V'Nisei, Suvayachav Amar Lo Meis, Harei Lo Seitze. So yeah, Eid, as the article correctly says over here, is an Eid kosher. And then another Eid comes and says, you're wrong. And the Gemara says, as long as she got a heter to get remarried. So the Gemara says, that Ula says, a klal we hold la halacha, that once the Basin recognizes Eid as an Eid kosher, accepted as Eid, so then kol makom shmina Torah echad arei kan shnayim, because Eid is isha, they allowed the Eid echad as circumstantial, as proof, good proof. Why? Because milsa devi legluye, right? An Eid echad only creates an assumption. You shouldn't create more than an assumption, but because milsa devi legluye, therefore it's a proof over here. So the proof, it's exactly like Shtei Edim. They believed him like Shtei Edim. Now, Shtei Edim is not 100% proof. It's not like universal knowledge. It's not a idea, but it is good enough proof. It's 80%, I like to say, 80% sure that what happened is truthful. Like alcohol, 40 proof, 40% alcohol is 80 proof. 80 is a proof. 80% is a proof. So as opposed to 75%, which would be an assumption. So it creates enough of a proof to rely on to let her get married. Then the next clause, the Mishnah says, Eid Omer Meis v'Shnayim Omer Lo Meis. One Eid says he died, and two Eidim say Lo Meis. Al V'Shani says Teitze. Now, if we're dealing with Kasher Eidim over here, right, this is obvious, the Gemara says, right? Two two people come and say, um, that he didn't die. Now, this line in the Mishnah is very cryptic because even if she got mit nises, which means she got a heter to marry, so if she got a heter to marry, they recognize the Eid Echad as Shnei Eidim. So therefore, it's 2 against 2. So 2 against 2, so it depends. If she actually got married, then she would be able to stay married because now she has a chazaka that she's married to the new guy. But even if she got a heter to get married, but now it's 2 against 2, we can't allow her to get remarried because she has a cheskas eishasish. So this case would really depend on whether she actually got married or not. And then the third case in the Mishnah says, Shnai or meis, ve'ed omer lo meis, he say, if two people said he died, and then one comes and says he didn't die, obviously, even if she didn't get a heter, 2 always beats 1. Now, the Gemara has problems with it. The Gemara says it's pshita, right? Ein dvaro shel echad makom shnayim, right? Normally, 1 is not 2 eidim is proof, and 1 against 2 is viewed as almost nothing. It's viewed as we don't believe them at all. So the 2 eidim remain as a full proof, and the 1 aid is. So the Gemara has to come up with the answers. The second and third clause in the Mishnah have to be explained according to Rabbi Nechemia. And here, Rabbi Nechemia says the second and third clause of our Mishnah are talking about psuli edus. We're talking about an isha, not a kosher man who's not a gazlan, who's not someone who's lovid baribis, not a guy who's a gambler. No, he's a kosher aid, 100% kosher aid. That's what we've been assuming until now. The second and third clause, the Gemara answers Rabbi Nechemia. Rabbi Nechemia has his own shita. Rabbi Nechemia says he basically equates when the Torah allowed over here by Eidus Isha, they allowed women, they gave women the same status as an Eid Kosher. So Nechemia says it outright. He says exactly the opposite of what I'm saying. He says, no, there's no difference, right? You go after Rov Deos. Therefore, if you have 2 women against 1 man, 1 Kosher Eid, against 2 Pop Sule, 2 women, it's 2 against 2 out of 3, it's 2 against 1, right? We rely on the 2 Eidim as opposed to the 1 Eid. So he equates exactly Psule Eidim and Kosher Eidim. But that's only Rabbi Nechemia. We don't hold like Rabbi Nechemia. We don't pass Rabbi Nechemia. Who's the Rabbanan? The Rabbanan is the Rabbanan, the Rabbim. They argue Rabbi Nechemia. And we don't pass like Rabbi Nechemia. We say, right, that the Eid Echad, a kosher Eid Echad, is worth more than Psuli Eidus. And therefore, if the Eid Echad kosher comes first, and then he's believed by Beis, he's Shtayim, and all the women you want to bring in the world, those are only viewed as an Eid Echad, as 1 Eid, and Ein Dvarav Shel Echad Makom Shnayim. That's how we would hold according to the Rabbanan. This whole Gemara interprets the Mishnah according to Nechemia. And Nechemia equates it to. He says you go after Rov Deos. He equates kosher Eidim and non-kosher Eidim when it comes to Eidus Isha. But what I'm saying is that there's no comparison at all. There's a big difference between Eid Echad kosher and Shdei Eidim, or women who are avodim or Eid Mipieh that are all psuli Eidus. You can't equate the two. So the Rabbanan hold not like Rabbi Nechemia, and that would be the Psak Halacha like the Rabbanan. And you see clearly that we do hold that in Eid Echad, only according to Nechemia, they're equated. But according to the Rabbanan, there's a big difference between a kosher Eid and psuli Eidus when it comes to Eidus Isha. Hope you enjoyed today's share. See you in Mishnah Yevamos.